we may settle in paradise wherever we please. How excellent is the reward of those who work righteousness. Surah Zumar, verse 74. Consequently, regardless of how hopeless the situation of the Ummah may look to us now, Muslims are promised by Allah that they will inherit the rule of the earth as others before them and after them have. When we compare the situation of Muslims today with that of the early 1900s, the early 20th century, 100 years ago, we are in a much better situation than back then. Problem is we only tend to look at now, what's happening now. Back then, virtually all of our countries were colonized and under colonial rule. The liberation struggles to free ourselves politically and economically from the European nations which had enslaved us was just beginning to formulate itself as thoughts in our forefathers' minds. Yes, we are still under different layers of neocolonialism, but in the last 100 years, we have come a long way from where we were. It is true that Muslims and Islam have replaced communism and socialism in the first half of the 20th century as the axis of evil from the Western world's perspective, with even China focused on the Muslim minority Uyghurs within their borders. However, the Islamic consciousness and political will of the Ummah has changed drastically over the centuries. A wise scholar once told me, you can judge the level of Islam of a people by the level of hijab of their women. 50 years ago, there was little hijab around the Muslim world. 100 years ago, women marched in the streets of Cairo and burned their hijabs. Today, the hijab is evident even in Western countries in which Muslims have settled. Women in Turkey were prohibited from wearing scarves in any government institution, whether educational or political, since the overthrow of the Ottoman Caliphate and the rise of secularism with Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. He died in 1938, just before World War II. He became the first president of the Republic of Turkey in 1923. He was a secularist. He promoted secularism across the country. Military behind him, he secularized everything. But he also did bring Turkey into production, development, progress, according to Western standards. That's why it's not surprising to find that the person who invented the first vaccine for COVID was a Muslim Turk in Germany. Yes, most of us don't even know that. Pfizer is the company which produced the vaccine for distribution, but they didn't invent it. It was a Turk, German Turk, who did it. So women in Turkey were prohibited from wearing scarves in any government institution, regardless of what that government institution was. The simplest, in the post office, not allowed. So much so that when Merv Kavakci, a member of parliament in 1999, challenged this law by showing up in the assembly wearing a scarf to take her parliamentary oath, she was forcibly removed, and her Turkish citizenship was subsequently stripped from her, revoked. However, today, the wife and daughter of Erdogan, president of Turkey, wear hijabs whenever they're seen with him in public. And his daughter is regularly seen with him because she is his personal secretary. Similarly, I lived in Malaysia during the late 60s and early 70s and never saw a single woman wearing hijab. Many Malaysian scholars in the 1960s believed that hijab was not mandatory. But by 2000, all the Malaysian ulama believed this previous viewpoint was un-Islamic. The turning point came when Malaysian females returned from study in the UK and US in the late 70s wearing hijab because of the student movement, Islamic student movement, which developed in these two countries as well as in other parts of the Western world. They were influenced by the rise in Islamic consciousness in most of the Muslim world at that time. This was also the time when hijab became popular in Egypt and most of the Muslim world. Therefore, there's no reason to be pessimistic regarding the revival of Islam in the world. It is rising, and Muslim nations are becoming more and more conscious of their Islamic responsibilities, with setbacks here and there. So our hope should be strong in Al-Barr's fulfillment of his promise to the believers to give dominance to Islam and Muslims in the world once again, even if it's among the last signs or the signs of the last day when Prophet Isa, leading the Muslim nation after the defeat of Dajjal, the defeat of the Gog and the Magog, establishes Islamic rule all over the earth. The fourth principle of Ibn Battal was to have fear where there is a warning. Now, there's no direct warning in the divine